Hey everybody, I'm running a couple minutes late because I was on a ride along, but I'm on my way. I'll just join the meeting virtually for now. Can you guys hear me?
I can. I'm Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, it's Commissioner Shabignally. I'm on my way. I just got done with the ride along, so I'm going to be just a couple minutes late. So I thought I'd join now. Just want to make sure you guys can hear me okay.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Last time, it was weird.
Yeah. Say that count as a quorum.
So we have a form of commissioner. Yeah. And I'm from the city of Loveland, yep. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, it's 2:00, so let's call, the Larimer County Regional Opioid Abatement Council, Region 2 meeting to order. It is April 22nd. It is 2 p.m. We'll get it ordered. We do have some new faces for the voting members, and we just have a quorum with 4 voting members, but I'd like to introduce Amy with the City of Loveland. Amy, want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'm the director of the Loveland Public Library, and if you're questioning why the director of the Loveland Public Library is sitting here, I was actually one of the people who worked with when things were getting formed with the opioid money, and I actually worked with the team who put together the groundwork for the council here. And then I also have worked with the MOU for the city of Loveland and funding and things. And I've worked with Allison Haid to decide how we were going to spend the opioid money here in Loveland. And in fact, I was just saying I need to check to see if we've gotten a payment yet or not this year. And I have always been the alternate, but there had been no need for me to step in until at this point in time. So I am familiar with the work that's being done and how the funds come in. And I did go through last month's minutes and everything. So and understanding kind of the structure and everything that you're at and things. So also the fact that we deal with a lot of people who may have lived experiences or who come to us. We also have a digital navigator team that it can help people get connected with telehealth and things like that at the library. Thank you.
Welcome, Amy. We're glad you're here, and we're looking forward to getting to know you better. Also, for the town of Wellington, Mayor Pro Tem Mason indicated that his alternate town manager, Patty, would be in his place. Patty and I did meet. But I have not seen her join yet, so when she does, we'll acknowledge her as well. All right, let's move on to public comment. Anybody like to make a public comment to the council on anything that's not on the agenda? Not seeing any, we'll close public comment. Moving on to approval of the March 27th, 2025 meeting minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes as presented.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not seeing or hearing anybody oppose the motion? Not hearing any. That passes unanimously 4-0. We're moving right along. I love this. Grant administration. We do have 2 final reports. This is always a wonderful opportunity to hear from our grantees.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do you want to do the financial update first?
Yes, I skipped that. Thank you. I do that every now and then. I jump right ahead.
Just try and keep you in line.
Let's step back and go to the financial update, and we'll turn it over to Janelle.
Yes. Right, a few quick notes this month. Today we'll review the budget to actual financials through April 15th. And beginning with inflows, to date, we've received the full 2.8 million in anticipated 2025 settlement funds. So everything has been received and we're starting to get notice of awards for 2026. Also of note, the interest on investments in Mackenzie settlement funds are still remain in the unallocated column and available to be used for Exhibit E purposes. Moving to expenditures. The budget this month has been updated to reflect any changes that were made to the spending categories as awards were approved. So, and payments for the first half of 2025 awards were issued to all grantees who have an effective start date of March or April. That leaves us with total expenditures to date at a little over 1 million, with 2.36 million left to distribute. And that is it, unless anyone has questions.
Great report, concise. Thank you. Any questions from any member of the council? All right. Wonderful financial report. Now we'll move on to grant administration. This is a good our opportunity to hear from our grantees on the final report. Each of them come up, give 15 minutes, and we time for questions from our grantees. So our first one is the Northern Colorado Health Alliance. We welcome you to come up and review us your final report.
It's virtual today, and Jay's coming back from conference, and I'm not seeing the meeting yet, so I will see you next. So
We are being told that they are
coming back from a conference.
coming back from a conference. So if it's okay with the council, we will jump to the Northern Colorado Health Network. Does anybody oppose that we jump in and come back when they're available? All right, we'll move to the Northern Colorado Health Network. Welcome.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, I'm Christy Brubaker. I'm the Prevention Service Manager at Northern Colorado Health Network. Just here to brag about the prevention team, and along with that, thank you guys, because we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing without this council. We're just gonna go over a couple of our key findings. I'm proud to report that because of our funding from the ROAC, we have a reported lives saved of 154 in this last year. I think an important note to share is that I'm thinking that there are way more lives saved besides the 154. Most of our participants are usually on site when overdose occur and our first responders, and some of those don't get reported back to us, but still, I love to see that 154 lives were reported back to us. Recently, we started doing syphilis testing in office, and that was in March of 2024. Since then, we've been able to conduct 264 free tests that we provide to our participants and to the community. We also partnered with the Family Medicine Center to be able to provide a Suboxone clinic within our location. We do that on Wednesday evenings and have brought a lot of folks that are looking into treatment, wanting treatment from opiates. And then our newest service that we have been provided is the hepatitis C treatment. We also partner with FMC for this in-house. It's bridging the gap between testing and treatment. They are able to do both of these services within one location. Next slide, please. These are just going over a couple of the demographics that I thought were important to share. Moving down towards the bottom of this slide, this is a quote from one of our participants. And I'll go ahead and read it. NCAP has not only helped me with keeping clean with works, but has also helped me with court cases and inspired me to help other people get clean once I am, or other people once I am clean. Again, this is applauding the prevention team as well as the ROAC. We wouldn't be able to have these awesome conversations with our participants and feedback if we weren't able to provide the services we are. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit about our performance. So this over the 6,080, those are across the board, our entire program of the amount of visits that we have been able to do with our participants. The 2260, those are the services that we've reported back to y'all. So we're doing a lot of services, and half of those are thanks to you guys. Our goal for our return rate for used syringes is 65%. As you can see, we've exceeded that at over 75%. The other 25% that we're not reporting on, it's likely that they're being returned back to the state Sharps container that's over at FMC, as well as other Sharps containers that are located at King Soopers and other places. These are the free testings that we offer at Northern Colorado Health Network. All of these, we've been doing them for quite a while, but over that course, they've increased over 200% from when we first started. So we're really excited to see those numbers continue to keep growing. Next slide. This is in regards to the overdose prevention on what we're handing out to community partners and to participants. So the prevention team has handed out over 3,600 doses of Narcan, also providing over 500 trainings on how to best distribute that or to use that. We've handed out over 3,200 xylazine testing strips and 8,000 fentanyl testing strips, which included over 1,000 different trainings on best practices. Next slide. So this was fun. We had our participants during services, I had them list 3 words that described our services and then kind of put it into a chart. So we can see helpful, safety, caring were the most words used from our participants. And then down at the bottom is another quote that they shared with us. What you do for us all addicts is amazing. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. This was probably 3 or 4 months ago that we did this, probably maybe even 6 months ago. And going back through these surveys literally brought tears to my eyes to see like the work that we're putting in for our people and how thankful that they are for us. Next slide. Harm reduction education is huge. I think harm reduction it's on a broader scale. And when we bring it down to more what we're doing, keeping people safe, talking about their safe and healthy, or their health and safety, their legal rights, bringing resources to them is one of the things that the prevention team is really thankful that we're able to do. Talking about harm reduction is also talking about safer snorting kits and smoking kits. We've been able to distribute over 2,400 safer snorting kits and almost 2,000 safer smoking kits. This helps with folks that are trying to stop intravenous use and moving more towards using a harm reduction method on that. A little side note, we will be handing out smoking kits, glassware, just for the time being until we can have further conversations for safety in the community. Next slide, please. This is probably I love community outreach. I love community education. I love when our team gets out there. So we go into the jails every 3 quarters. We provide STI treatment or testing and sexual education to the women and men's treatment team over at the halfway house. We've also go into Colorado State University and offer testing to CSU students. We recently have been asked to go into Poudre High School. They were putting on a play called Anatomy of Grey. The teacher wanted the students to have a little bit more history on HIV and the origins of where it actually came from. So my team went in and did a beautiful presentation for their students so that they could better understand the play that they were putting on. And then at the bottom of this screen, we have a quote from Poudre High School just saying that they were so fortunate to have us come in and to thank us for our time. Next slide. Just another survey that I did with our participants, asking them to rate our services on a scale from 1 to 10. We can see that we're showing more than 10 on a few different occasions. It was just really cool to show my team and to get the feedback from the participants for quantitative data. Slide. So this is a referral and the collaborative services that we're providing. We've provided 252 referrals to behavioral health services. Last cycle, we were working with interns to offer the Connect program. It was a quick 10 to 15 minutes behavioral health interaction that we were able to offer. Luckily, we have been funded to be able to offer that moving forward. And so shout out to ROA for us to be able to do that. We've referred 95 referrals for our mat services, which we do in-house, as well as provided 205 referrals. Slide. We went out in the community end of last year and did a community-wide cleanup. So we did that in Fort Collins, Greeley, and Loveland, and we invited everybody, the community, residents, whoever wanted to come out and join us. Just a few pictures of the cleanup. We plan on doing that again this year and adding on to that. We also have 13 sharps containers in the community for safe disposal of syringes that we maintenance, we provide. So when they are full, we go and clean them up and give them a new container for that. We're beginning a partnership with the city of Fort Collins. We're hoping to get installed large sharps containers that kind of like the old mailboxes. So folks can easily put them there instead of having to bring them all the way to our location or find other locations throughout Fort Collins. Overdose prevention trainings. We go into CSU. We've gone to the social work class probably 4 times within the last 6 months, showing them Narcan, explaining all the things around it, as well as the city of Fort Collins. We just went and did a training with their supervisors for the transport department. Every week we go out with Summit Stone and we do a partnership. It's the Loveland Outreach Team. So we go out with them, offer resources, meet people out in the community, bridge the gap for folks that wouldn't be able to come into our location or Summit Stone location and try and get some engagement. And then last slide. So we have these hung up in our lobby, just more engagement from our participants. This left one is it has stars and some other things. It's just asking our participants to let us know where our presence is needed, where they're wanting us to come out in the community, offer resources, maybe do a cleanup. And then the stars are gonna be for places that they're thinking that they would like to have C-sharps containers for easy disposal. And then on the left side is our drop rate. So I track this every couple weeks. I track our rate and see where we're at, and I let our participants know so that they can also be engaged with what we're doing with our drop rate. And I think that's it. Here for questions.
Questions? Yes.
I'm not sure I heard you when you said about your safe smoking kits that you were doing something until you do more education. I don't think I heard what you said.
Meeting with city officials just to talk about safety, and so just putting a pause on it from the top.
Around that, I work for the city of Fort Collins. So I know there was some discussion with the DDA or Downtown Development Authority and stuff around that, which may be what you're responding to. So in that work, and I'm wondering if there's partnership with the health department or anyone else around kind of the evidence-based benefits to harm reductions, particularly around safe smoking kits and how it reduces the risks associated with intravenous drug use, and kind of is that kind of what the work you're trying to do?
Exactly. So I could speak on my own personal life. I was an intravenous drug user, and for me, it wasn't from here to here. I had to take stepping stones, and that was my stepping stone, and I believe that's a lot of our participants' stepping stone. We can't just automatically assume abstinence right away. We kind of got to move at a pace, and that was my pace. I went from this step to this step to this step, and I think that's a lot of our participants also.
Is there, I'm just wondering, more outreach opportunities like to the community? I get meeting with the city officials and everyone who are having like a reaction to seeing glass pipes. I think is really their reaction and concern around that. But are there other, I'm just wondering what other opportunities exist to partner? I don't think it should be all on you, I guess is what I'm saying. How do we better promote harm reduction at all levels?
Yeah, I could jump in. It was brought to my attention there is some authority under statute for the public health director when it comes to that. So we are scheduling a meeting to get City Fort Collins Downtown Authority as well as the network together to have those conversations and go from there. But absolutely, thank you, Beth, for that.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments? I do want to make a comment, folks. Syphilis, unfortunately, for the last 4 to 5 years is on the rise in Colorado and nationally. And congenital syphilis is also on the rise, which is very, very serious. Typically, that can be fatal for the infant. Last year, the state public health department issued an order. It was a very effective order. We're seeing congenital syphilis declining rapidly, but it's all about testing and treatment. So thank you for the partnership with the health department on getting more access to testing, especially when pregnant people. But we are seeing that go down. But syphilis for anybody is a very dangerous disease, as we all know, without treatment. So, and it can spread very easily too. So that is very, very important. We do appreciate that work as well as your other testing. I do think it's great. My one question is, so you had received back that Narcan was administered 154 times in the last year.
At least.
And that's only what's been reported.
Pardon?
It was just only what's been reported, which
Yeah,
means there's
yeah,
probably been
it's
more.
usually the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's an important statistic for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more shout out. I wanted to, I can't remember the number now, but 150 some lives saved, 154. And those, again, do you measure that by, people, is it by self-report kind of thing?
Yeah, well, not self-reporting, so just folks coming in for our services, that's one of our questions that we ask when they're coming in. What happened to your last Narcan dose? Did you use it? Was a life saved? So we ask every single participant coming in on that question.
Also, I'm sure an undercount, but that's pretty amazing.
It is. Did you have a question?
No,
Okay, that's it.
she, once again, Beth and I are taking it.
I do want to make a note, Patty Garcia from the town of Wellington is with us. She's the town manager. She's the alternate for Wellington. Welcome, Patty. We're glad you're with us. Do you have any questions regarding the presentation?
I do not at this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all you do. Let's give them a round. We do have an action item. The action item is just to accept that final report.
I'll make a motion to accept that final report.
We have a motion and a second. Any further conversation? See none. Anybody oppose the motion? See none. That motion passes. Now 5-0. Okay, we have MJ with us. So MJ, Northern Colorado Health Alliance final report. Thank you for joining.
Hey y'all, I apologize if it is noisy. I am in an airport on my way back from Nashville. Was able to attend the National Prescription and Illicit Drug Use Summit here and have spent 4 days hanging out with experts across the nation. So it's an exciting reason to be in an airport, but it does mean that I am virtual today. And I hope it is not too noisy because it is quite busy around me, but let's get rolling. For our annual report, I'm hoping to just move through the objectives with you for 2024 and some outcomes and programmatic highlights, and also move through the budget to actual with y'all. Feel free to interrupt and ask questions and all of that jazz as I kind of dig into these pieces with y'all. But to start off with, as a reminder, we have a 4 objective working area grant, community education, care coordination to treatment and recovery support, provider education and evaluation are those 4 approved purpose buckets. And with that evaluation, I'll address that throughout the presentation because we have evaluation components tied to some of these other working areas in addition to that countywide scope. And so I'm happy to report that across all 4 of those working areas, we did achieve all of our annual objectives. And if you go to the next slide for me, community education, stigma reduction, again, able to achieve all 3 of those to really the stigma reduction efforts throughout the Larimer County region and ensure that we're talking about best practice and effective treatment and support through those community education structures. But ultimately, that looks like us hosting those overdose awareness day events, but also doing community education, one-on-one education with folks throughout Larimer County. So we were able to host overdose awareness day events in Loveland, Estes Park, and Fort Collins over the weekend of August 24th and 25th, and then August 29th and 30th for Estes Park. Across those events, we had attendance numbers in Loveland at about 150 individuals, distributed about 120 boxes of naloxone and 50 testing strips. For Collins, we were able to distribute about 200 naloxone kits and 100 fentanyl testing strips. Estes, 35 naloxone kits and about 70 fentanyl testing strips. At the Loveland event, we actually had a secondary outcome that came back to us in that we learned that 5 of the kits that were distributed at that Loveland event were used to reverse 3 overdoses at the Mishawaka concert venue that weekend in Bellevue, Colorado. Bellevue, some of you may not know, is a really small unincorporated community in there. We're about 60 minutes to the nearest hospital, and so we could definitely see that some life-saving efforts occur that weekend. And we've continued to partner with the staff at the Mishawaka both before Overdose Awareness Day, but also beyond, to make sure that their staff are equipped to handle overdose emergencies and crises, given their distance to medical support and teams. And so that's been a really cool partnership that has continued throughout the grant. In addition to Overdose Awareness Day events, we were able to gain insights from participants of those spaces. Most participants reported that they felt familiar with naloxone or Narcan. 92% said that they felt comfortable calling 911 during an overdose, and 54% had actually carried Narcan, but only 14% had actually used it. That's despite having 44% of attendees who participated in that survey witness an overdose. And so we've got 54% had carried it, only 14% had actually used it, and 44% of those folks actually having witnessed an overdose. So happy to see that the events are landing in the right hands, and similarly those naloxone kits. Really that gap continues to highlight the need for saturation of this life-saving medication for folks in the community, and continue to impact those overdose numbers throughout the region. This was also out of those evaluation components of Overdose Awareness Day and stigma reduction. Nearly all participants agreed that everyone at risk of witnessing an overdose should really be given naloxone, and that family and friends should be prepared to respond, which means that we need to continue our efforts to build up community education and make sure that folks know that just because it's not them doesn't mean it's not the person next to them. And I do believe that our region does a good job at that. And so I hope to continue seeing that agreement scale and stigma reduction scale reflect that. With folks who have direct experience, either witnessing an overdose or carrying Narcan, they had a greater knowledge of harm reduction, and also stronger advocacy and desires to see robust expansion and access to tools to reduce harm regarding substances. But it also demonstrates that our peers are a critical asset, and that their lived experience in public education and outreach strategies continue to broaden. For objective 2, that was really surrounding additional education opportunities and tools surrounding harm reduction, recovery, coaching, and overdose prevention with naloxone opioid antagonists. And so this is just a summary of the different ways in which we achieved this objective. But ultimately in Larimer County, we were able to perform 12 community-based trainings with organizations, businesses, churches, et cetera. Some of those are listed here. And similarly, we were able to bring forward the data around distribution of resources, including naloxone in our kiosk structure. So people can go and receive anonymous access to naloxone. Stigma continues to be the #1 reason why people don't access resources surrounding substance use. And so providing additional ways in which we can do that broadens our community's ability to respond to overdose. Overall, across all modalities, I'm delighted to say that we were able to distribute over 11,000 naloxone kits in 2024, which there's 2 doses per kit, in case you did not know that. And so that brings us to about 22,000 doses of naloxone moving into Larimer County. Those kiosks represent a big distribution area and bring us just under 7,000 kits and 14,000 doses. One-on-one outreach and engagement. We also have a naloxone mailing program. That's in the 4,236 kits count. And then we also were able to distribute a large number of fentanyl testing strips and printed educational materials. And those materials are available in English, Spanish, and 5 additional languages to make sure we're providing that education across a language justice lens. All right, I'm gonna keep rolling. I know I've been talking a lot of numbers already, so continuing with the evaluation of those substance use education efforts and prevention efforts, we were able to assess the provider education that occurred in the community, which included a pre and post evaluation of training participants. With that, we saw incredible outcomes in change in knowledge, change in perception around overdose response, familiarity with harm reduction strategies, and ability and competence and confidence in administering naloxone responding to an overdose. So to that end, saw folks move from 58% saying that they knew all the things in the assessment at that pretest to 94.8% after completing the training and moving through that assessment of response and facts. The largest improvement areas were with the pretest being at just under 56%, to 95.2%, which is surrounding if we administer naloxone and it's not actually an opioid overdose, are we going to actually hurt somebody, which is one of the big reasons folks don't actually administer naloxone. So it has been a heavy emphasis area in those education efforts. They also had higher knowledge in the frequent myths we see surrounding overdose and when to administer a second dose. As far as confidence levels go, 30% at pretest said they had no confidence in using any form of naloxone. However, after the training, just surrounding 80% of participants said they felt very confident in their ability to administer and respond to an overdose. I think another interesting data point that is asked in that assessment is people's perception of safety around naloxone. And the question is, do you feel safer knowing if naloxone is available in whatever setting that you're in? And 62.2% reported feeling safer knowing that naloxone was available. And 70%, similar to what we saw in the Overdose Awareness Day events, agreed that everyone at risk of witnessing an overdose should have access to an support. Sorry for the flight announcement happening behind me. Some things we cannot work around, but here we are. So with objective 3, surrounding stigma reduction, we partnered with the health district and supported additional work in the Changing Minds campaign. This is a very wordy summary of what was accomplished with that, but ultimately they took that campaign and updated the language to further reduce stigma, including building out new education materials and a social media campaign and the training videos and such that are shared out in the community quite widely. And similarly, refine the audience, develop some target populations, and revise to build out their sustainability strategy surrounding long-term content management, continued engagement and growth of the campaign, and also include some evaluation and measurement protocols. I will say that the Changing Minds campaign is used statewide because of how effective it is at really taking all of that brain science of substance use and addiction and boiling it down to 3.5 minutes for that video or 25-30-minute presentation structure. And it's really, really well received across audience pools, and something that our teams actually use a lot with statewide education as well. So very cool campaign, and glad to see it get a refresh out of this year. Beyond the updates, though, the health district was able to identify and engage in some key education and outreach events. They were able to leverage those new resources at Overdose Awareness Day, Fight the Stigma, Rethinking Addiction. They also did a really cool presentation at the Colorado Court Appointed Special Advocates, aka CASA conference, and able to then provide education to around 230 individuals with 10 trainings throughout the year. They were also able to distribute naloxone and pushed out another 1,600 units of Narcan into the community last year. Before I move on to the next section, does anyone have questions so far?
MJ, I do. On the stigma reduction, Changing Minds, what I'd like is, we have our Youth Action for Health group. I'm probably aware of that. Boy, I'd like to link you up with that team, because what we're hearing from our youth is quite a bit of stigma around substance misuse, and love to get that in with the youth and start working towards stigma reduction with our high schoolers and middle schoolers. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, I think our teams would be absolutely delighted to do that, actually. We were able to go into Poudre School District a few times last year and actually had a presentation on overdose and harm reduction and substance use, but also had several of our staff with lived and living experience share their stories. And some of them went to the high school that they were sharing stories in, and that was a really cool partnership, and I'm sure that they would come back and expand beyond that as well. And so we would be happy to hang out with the Youth Action for Health team, and can do that alongside the health district for sure.
Excellent. Thank you, MJ.
You bet.
Any other questions at this time? Yes.
MJ, today I was doing some ride-alongs, and of course, unfortunately, there was another probably fentanyl overdose today. I don't know the outcome, but I did hear from some folks about that video, and just it's amazing to me over the last 2 years, just the change in conversation about the brain chemistry and trying to understand that just the flip of calling this an illness and from where it was before, right? And the stigma that was attached. So that video has been seen a lot. So when you talk about the refresh, are they redoing the video with some new data and some different things, or what does that look like? And someone told me it been, I don't know if you have viewed, how many times it been viewed, but I heard it was 100,000. Is it more than that? I'm just curious because I heard it was viewed quite a bit of times. So I'm curious about that because it did seem, I've seen it a few times. I saw it at the Narcan training, the couple of Narcan trainings I went to. And I was watching everyone's faces as they were watching it. So I'm just curious about you did talk about refresh. What does that look like?
Yeah, actually, a lot of the refreshes surrounding language, and making sure that we're moving towards additional and beyond person-centered language. So even the word addiction has a negative connotation and stigma tied to it. And so moving the language more into a person who uses substances, a person in treatment, a person in recovery, a person with a substance use disorder are some of the key elements of change, because that video does say addiction. And what's tricky about language is that some of the language we use every day, and actually my title prior to the one that I hold now was Director of Addiction Response, right? So making sure that we're in a space of continued evolution as we understand more about how people receive information, that we are identifying how we push information back out, and continue to break down the stigma we see in communities on a regular basis. Where that gets really to a dynamic conversation is, are we changing language to an extent that the people who are using the language don't know that things are changing, or don't align with those language changes. And so really still trying to be as dynamic as possible while also holding best practice.
Great, I appreciate that answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, I will keep rolling, but feel free to interrupt me. All right, so for care coordination and treatment and recovery support, again, happy to say that we achieved all three of these objectives, really including enhancing the network of care, providing access to MAT, peer recovery support, and individual and group and long-term treatment options, increasing the awareness of those offerings, and similarly aligning our overdose prevention tools with those efforts. And so to that end, with the funds, we were able to initiate 361 new care plans with unique individuals. So those are unduplicated counts. With that, when we do something with someone in our EHR, we call it a task. That's the EHR's language, but across those 361 individuals completed 2,143 tasks. And 557 peer recovery coach sessions. So those are more one-on-one style, and then 60 group peer recovery sessions, supporting 396 individuals across the group settings. That group count could include duplicates, and that's because we keep our groups anonymous so that people feel comfortable accessing them. So I can't tell you how many uniques are there, unfortunately. We also held over 850 resource navigation and connection to services discussions, and really moving that through beyond the initial intake. So when we first sit down with someone, really moving through all of their social determinants and identifying the barriers to any positive change, both in their treatment recovery, but also in that stability component that we know is so critical to someone being happy and well. And so very, very cool to see it in numbers. We don't often get to spend time in that setting. So who were served through the funds in this outcome area? This is a demographic summary, but ultimately, when we again sit down with somebody, we ask them, what's your food access look like? What's your insurance access? Do you have clothing? Do you have housing? All of these pieces. And overwhelmingly, we can see that our folks are struggling, our community is struggling, and that we've got a lot of work to do to stabilize folks' basic needs in addition to their treatment and recovery outcomes. And so, additionally, something to note is 58% of our folks that we serve are parents and have minor children. And so if they are in this 37% who can't afford food, or in 51% who can't afford their health insurance, they certainly aren't going to be prioritizing their treatment meds or their recovery sessions or those types of things. So really working with folks to move around those barriers and find access to resources so they can be successful. On the next slide, we have a breakdown of zip codes and communities. And what's interesting, I've found actually, because I just did the reports for Weld County and the Northeast as well, is that we have about a similar percentage of folks outside of the community in those abatement councils that are being served by dollars from other councils. And so with the Northeast, I found about 22% actually were from Larimer or Weld County. And so to see 66% of folks receiving services from these staff be from Larimer County is in alignment with what we're seeing across the region. But with our EHR, as soon as we update someone's address, it only will hold that address. So when I run a report, if we've moved them into treatment in Denver, for example, it's going to snag their Denver address. And that's a barrier that our EHR hasn't been able to solve. It's one we saw last year as well. But we are working on changing our EHR in the next 10 days, actually, to better reflect what's going on with who and where they're coming from to receive services. But within the Larimer County zips, we saw folks in Berthoud, Estes, Fort Collins, Timnath, Wellington, and Fort Collins. This got cut off. There was a Loveland in there too. So
What's the percentage for Loveland?
Let me see. I believe Loveland is actually the 18%, but this chart got cut off with the keys. So I will snag that for you and drop it in the chat. I'm sorry, I didn't save correctly. But the graph on the left shows county-based distribution. The graph on the right shows Larimer County distribution.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
MJ,
Yeah.
can, just like I asked for kind of the breakdown of people coming to Longview for last year, is there a way you could send that to us? I'm looking for Wellington, Loveland, and I see Berthoud there, but it would be nice to know also if there's any unincorporated Larimer County folks. I don't know if some of those zip codes are probably hard to determine that, but if you have any of that, I'd be curious about rural versus urban kind of things too, if you have any of that, and just kind of, again, I always like to dig down a little bit deeper, but I'm just curious about those. If you have any of that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
We do. I'm certainly happy to share that. Okay. So moving beyond demographics, let's look at the impact of services rendered. And so we're able to do a annual look back of impact and outcomes. And some of those are surrounding folks' overall wellness, their stability, their substance use, their mental health, and with that, this year's data was pretty staggering and really cool to see that folks' mental health improved across the board. And so it decreased from first engagement to 6 months beyond that. seeing about 9% difference in anxiety, reports of anxiety, reports of depression decreasing by 16%, trouble understanding, remembering, or concentrating decreasing around 15%, controlling violent behavior decreasing by 7%, a reduction in hallucinations by 2%, and a reduction in suicide by 4%. And so really these are self-report. However, we do believe that our folks trust us. And really all of these represent statistically significant outcomes in that there's less than a 5% chance that it is by chance that those numbers changed. So additionally, in figure 2, you can see that reduction. Oh, next slide. Thank you. The next slide shows that change in duration of mental health symptoms in the past month. So that reduction in anxiety, reduction in depression, trouble understanding, and suicide attempts, similarly showing that statistically significant data change. The next slide talks about prevalence of substance use. And so members are able to report to us their level of use. And we can see that a reduction in substances across the board, be it tobacco and nicotine to heroin and fentanyl. And again, representing that statistically significant outcome. So exciting to see. Right. We also have them talk to us about their emergency department use. And to that end, able to see, again, quite a staggering difference of 21% reporting frequent use of the emergency department in the last month, dropping to about 8% after 6 months. From the social determinants of health standpoint, asking questions around employment and housing are critical to that, but also we ask about their quality of life. How are you feeling? And what does this look like for you? And so saw a really significant increase in housing status and employment status, shifting about 20% for both of those components in that 6-month time period. And then also seeing that change at intake in comparison to 6 months in the red, yellow, blue, and tealish green second graph there, with significant change for folks disclosing good or very good as their quality of life at 6 months. Similar to asking our folks how it's going for them, just as a whole, we ask how we are doing for them. And so do a perception of care and services assessment with folks. They can opt into this, but ultimately really saw incredible feedback from folks saying that they felt their information was kept confidential, that their care coordinator and peer cared for and about their cultural needs, be it race or ethnicity or language or gender or sexual orientation, religion, that they felt listened to and welcomed, that they were successful in coordinating their care, and that they had a positive impact on their treatment and recovery journey. And so this is a quote from someone in the survey, but always good to see it come out on many sides, both from the change in health, but also in the feedback about staff. For objective 2, this is increasing awareness of available support and treatment options in Larimer County. This is the quick overview and summary, but there is a massive report that you all have, I believe, and I'm sorry. Sorry it is so lengthy, but again, able to provide education presentations to about 185 individuals, community mutual aid and support, that 60 group sessions, 396 individuals impacted through that, navigation support sessions to various outcome treatment options, and then those printed distributed materials. That does not include any of the social media engagement or anything to that adventure, but we do that as well. With objective 3, this is just a further breakdown of some of those tools that were provided. So doing that one-on-one engagement and community outreach, 4,236 instances of antagonists being distributed, community-based learning, and group peer coaching again. So shifting into provider education, there are 2 objectives here, which is to develop the community peer recovery coach workforce trainings for 20 people, to have free access to that professional development, and then also to move through the Rethinking Addiction and Recovery Conference and administer to 300 or more individuals. Rethinking Addiction, we were able to see over 500 individuals in attendance. That was listed on October 1st last year. 2025 session is set for October 28th. And we are buddied up with the Colorado Attorney General's office again this year for that event, and have already started planning because it's about that time. October will be here tomorrow. And so from the evaluation standpoint of the conference last year, we had a lot of folks engage in the surveys, which is excellent. It helps us do better next time, ultimately resulting in just under 250 individuals completing the pre-survey and about 175 completing the post-survey. We saw knowledge gains across all 5 areas of evaluation, and those were categorized into prevention, treatment, harm reduction, recovery, and equitable practice and leadership. The greatest increases were seen in recovery and equitable practice, and saw statistically significant growth in each of those domains. Overall, people liked the event. 90% said that they were either very or extremely satisfied. And they were able to leave with actionable takeaways. So it's one thing to inundate with information, but we like to inundate with information and what you can do about it. And so that was a key component of making sure that we had actionable learning that day. We also want to.
MJ, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and you're giving us great data, but we are past time, and
okay.
You could wrap up. I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. With all of this is obviously available to you all, but as far as let's finish on the budget, so then I can give you back the rest of your meeting here. We are underspent, is the quick and dirty of it. We expended all but 9.68% of our budget across all areas. But when we have a budget the size that we do, it does result in a pretty large figure of just under 63,000. That is largely attributed to staffing. And ultimately, we were able to receive additional community donations for the community education components surrounding Overdose Awareness Day than anticipated and budgeted for. And so to that end, on the next slide, obviously this is up to the council, but last year there was indication to provide some recommendations. And so here are my recommendations for the use of that underspend. If you recall the February meeting, we presented 2 scopes, and one of which was tabled for later. But it would be my suggestion that we take that underspend and support the Teen Self-Care Fair event and the mini series. That's for Loveland, Colorado, and use the other funds there to support increased community assistance, given the change in social determinants and access that we're seeing. And then I caught a mistake actually while doing our final report, and that is that we had originally proposed a $30,000 budget for the health district and only had a contract for 20,000. And so that also represents a gap in that underspend. But I will pause there.
So MJ, are you asking for a vote on or direction with this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, alternatively, we can return these funds to the council and you can redistribute them elsewhere. But wanted to provide you some options.
So I was unaware of this piece. So in the past, I have announced that I serve on the board for the Northern Colorado Health Alliance. Thus, if there's any kind of votes like this, I do need to excuse myself. So I'm going to excuse myself and turn it over to the vice chair.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, everybody. I guess this is kind of something we weren't maybe ready to think about today and talk about. Is any thoughts or comments on this? Do we want to just take the funds back and rethink it, add it to their bucket? Do we want to look at parts of this or all of this? Mr. DA.
Have we had people return funds before, and what have we done? I can't remember. I would just like to make sure we're treating other groups the same.
Right.
Because this is inevitably going to happen.
We'll have to look into that, but none that I'm aware of.
I think we've had some folks where we've had a mix of both. I think we've had some where we let them return back, and then there were some that wanted to add. I can't remember the details, but I think we've had both instances from what my
I'm not recalling any return back, but I do remember some extent carrying over, yeah.
I know, yeah. I did think when there was one that we have had some where we've taken. Since it's such a large amount of money, I kind of wanted to maybe have a little more time to think about it. I don't know what you all.
I would definitely like some more information about the teen self-care since it does relate back to Loveland. To be able to speak on that, and to make sure that, you know, it's in the best self-interest for Loveland and things. And I'm sure it's a great idea, but to have more information would be definitely something that would make me feel more comfortable to speak to it if we vote for that.
This is Patty. This is Patty from Wellington, and I would hesitate for Wellington to vote on this without Brian's input, since it was not scheduled. Thank you. So I would recommend that we wait if possible.
I'm good with that. I would, if people are open to it, I would be open to making a motion to at least carrying forward the Changing Minds campaign portion, the 10,000 that was supposed to go in and was just a mistake in budgeting or however that happened. I don't know, no blame, but since it was intended to be used there, I would just, if the council would be okay, I would make a motion for that.
Would you like to make a motion for that?
I would like to make a motion to carry forward the $10,000 for the Changing Minds campaign.
And I'll second that. I guess I can do that, so I'll second that. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone want to abstain? Anyone opposed? So I think we have 3 for the 5 and I don't know, Patty, are you voting? Did you vote yes or no on the?
No, I did not. I was still thinking, and I was trying to text Brian so I could give him a heads up. But it looks like it was just missing from the 2024 budget. Should have been included in 2025. So I think he would support that. So I would vote yes.
So that's 4, and out of the 5, we have no abstains, no's. So that.
Just checking for accuracy on that. My facial expressions, I just want to double check and make sure, is this all accurate?
So we have 5. We have 4 votes. That should be a majority, right? For the quorum, and we have quorum. So that motion passes to allow the 10,000 to go forward for the Changing Minds campaign. Okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay, so now I need, I need a motion to table these other asks for a future meeting, because we have some other asks for a future meeting. Because we're not saying no, as I'm understanding, we're not saying no, this sounds like we want to have some more discussion on that, correct?
Okay, so we're not asking them to return the 52,000 remaining.
Unless we want to.
We could just put it on the agenda for next meeting so that folks know that we're voting on it, especially since it is a significant potential turn back that folks are just.
That's what I'm thinking too. Because I think probably Brian would like to talk in on this and others. So can I have a motion for that, please?
I motion that we move the discussion till the next meeting for the 52,000.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Any other? Okay, I'm not sure if you said yes or no.
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, so that motion passes. Okay, so now I need a motion to accept this final report or not.
I'm going to accept the request.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, I think we have concluded that. So we took 3 motions, Mr. Chair. And MJ, safe travels home. Thanks for all the great data and appreciate all the work that you did. Certainly interested in what you learned in Nashville.
Yeah, thank you. It was an adventure is the summary, but I will dig in with you there.
Sounds great. All right. So
Have a good one, y'all.
Yeah, take care. Thank you. So I will now have
Thanks,
this
y'all.
meeting back over to Mr. Chair.
Thank you, thank you. All right, moving right along. We are behind time, but we'll try to catch up. We're gonna ask the Abundance Foundation to come back up. If you recall, it was last month. They gave us their full report or their submittal. And there was one item in there that council struggled with on the funding, and that was the property of 100,000. So at that time, we asked the Abundance Foundation to come back with a revised budget, and then we can make a move from there. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Sounds good, thanks. So we went back and revised the budget, we took that out, and so we were gonna plan for 2026 and bring that back in the next round. So we just changed that, we changed the total down to 225 from the 250 that was on there. Decided to put it towards staff cost and then additional housing costs with opening up the new property that we got in Portland, so.
Any questions?
So those are the indirect costs, kind of like, or are those direct costs? I know you call them direct, but utilities and stuff, are we considering those indirect or direct? Because this is housing. I had that question.
Yeah.
Well, you're right, it is a matter of opinion, but if housing includes heat, beds, and everything, I would consider that direct.
Either way, we just want to know what to allow.
Thank you for that, John. Thank you, Jessica. Great question. Any other questions? Yes.
How many recovery coaches do you have?
We just hired more, so 12 right now.
So this would just cover half of them for the year.
So this would be to hire more coaches because we're expanding more into Loveland, so. And then we're additionally going to be at some point taking coaches that are trained up in Fort Collins and Loveland to try and expand out to Greeley and Weld County, but we'll need a team still in Fort Collins and Loveland when we do further expansion.
And then the others, if I might, Mr. Chair, the others are 64 beds. Is that 64 beds for?
It would be, so the 995, the way that the rent is, the scholarshiping works is we cover 50% the first month, 25 the second, 25 the third. So it would cover, each 995 covers a 90-day period for one person. And we scholarship people not just in our housing, but like I said before, in Oxford House and the other ones around.
Okay.
Question though.
Just one more clarification, on the 6 recovery coaches that the 150 covers, the 25,000 for the annual rate is a part of their salary, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
good question.
Yeah.
Any others or entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this grant asking application as presented today.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further conversation? Does anybody oppose the motion? Hearing none, that passes. Congratulations. Thank you for
guys.
your work.
Appreciate it.
All right. Okay, moving along on the agenda. One of the items we've been talking about, an important item, is equity and approaching equity and how, what do we mean by equity? We had our equity principle, but we went back to staff, if you recall, and asked them to look at our reports and our feedback we've received through the meeting and give us some ideas, at least 2 to 3, on what are we talking about equities. Dr. Jared Olson, our senior population epidemiologist, is going to come and present this 1.5-page document for us to consider. So Jared?
It's brief 1.5-page document for your consideration. So my understanding is you all are looking for a path forward on reallocating, or excuse me, allocating $160,000. I have 3 categories, 3 broad categories on here that we can kind of consider for equity. And partially, I think some of the challenge with this is many of the, if not all of the projects that we've done already have equity considerations involved, right? They're already targeting particularly vulnerable populations. They're already trying to address barriers that exist. So I certainly want to acknowledge that many grantees, or if not all grantees, are already involved in this work in some way. So I would suggest to the council that you consider perhaps what are neglected buckets, neglected categories of equity work that the council may continue to support or add additional resources to. So I'll just briefly remind you that we have an equity principle that you all have endorsed, and that can kind of be a guiding framework at the top. I won't read through it in the interest of time. And then 3 categories here. So one of them is repairing past harms. So this one is not one that is as prominent in the opioid abatement funding nationally. There aren't a ton of examples about this, though there are some local ROACs that appear to have done some compensation for funerals or memorialization. Overdose Awareness Day might be an example of something like that. Legal aid has come up. Direct compensation seems to be very limited. There's only one pharmaceutical company that has currently compensated claimants that were harmed by their product. Support for children of overdose victims is another example there. Certainly we have many families impacted by drug overdose deaths, including many children who are left without care. There's another category here, which is removing barriers to ensure services work for everyone. This one you'll certainly be able to see some in the existing work that you funded. Culturally responsive systems, addressing gaps in life or systems transitions, rural access, reductions in stigma, reductions in cost, all of those fit here. If we're going to think about in the paragraph section, populations that might be relevant for our work here, some examples might include MAT, right? That has not always been accessible to all persons, though certainly the ROAC's work has expanded that. Medication-assisted treatment is what I mean by MAT. Nationally, we have seen a rise in Hispanic or Spanish-speaking populations, and we've seen some of that locally as well in Larimer County as well. And then, of course, we know that our LGBTQ plus communities and sometimes BIPOC communities, including BIPOC youth, do not always have services that match their needs. And then the third category here, if you flip over, thinking about those who are most vulnerable or helping those who are most in need, right? So what are those critical communities that need additional consideration? So there you might think of folks who have generational trauma or generational substance use disorder, folks who have homeless, who have lack other stabilizing factors in their lives, certainly a focus on trauma-informed care. Anything that targets a root cause might be part of this, that you'd be interested in. We know that an individual was recently released from justice systems in prison, are at a significantly higher rate of overdose, so that might be a vulnerable population. There's a higher mortality for people experiencing homelessness. And certainly there's a link between children in a household where there's a substance use disorder and their risk of substance use in the future. And then finally, stepping out of that category a little bit, there's one additional opportunity for the council that may or may not require additional funding, but that would be to maximize the use of lived experience expertise that you have already invited onto the council by perhaps asking of them or of an organization to expand that reach and information gathering. It's also something you could consider, putting in a request to staff to facilitate as well. So that we can continue to maximize the expertise and insight that those community members have.
Fantastic. This is what I was really hoping to see and talk about today, so appreciate it very much. I had a few questions, if that would be okay with everyone. We had talked about this once before about, our Hispanic Latino population. And we have some organizations that are pretty active. And I'm wondering, I think you had said, I remember very clearly you had said, we could put some money here to make a huge impact in that community here by, education or getting Narcan or doing some culturally responsive services or education. We have some active groups that maybe could partner with the ROAC or with the health department. Is there something like that now? Is that something that if we ask for something like that, would that be easy to create and get out? That we would do, I don't know what this looks like, but if we gave that money to some of these, I'm thinking like Heart and Soul or the Five Pipelines and have them, sponsor an education series where maybe they partner with the health department and do that. And bring this out or others. Would that be a heavy lift or would that be something that we could do? And maybe even target some pregnant moms in that as well? I'm just curious about that. That's my first question.
I think from a process standpoint for the council, we saw with the impacted pregnant individuals request that was not something that organizations were able to fill immediately, but it did provoke some interest and eventually you were able to get there. One of the things, depending on your timeline for distribution of these funds, you could put out one or more than one priority requests. We'd like to work in this particular area and specify that you would consider those applications first. And then if you don't receive those applications but still want to distribute those funds, you could receive those for some other topic that was of interest to you. As far as the health department partnering with someone like BIPOC Alliance, I think that's something we could consider. However, I'm not sure we have the internal expertise for the topic, the same way that some of your existing grantees or possible grantees do. So maybe you would encourage a organization with that education component to partner with a well-integrated community organization, a BIPOC Alliance, Amigos, something like that, to do that distribution and information work.
Great. Next question. I'm very interested in the supportive children from overdose victims and the overlap with the focus on trauma-informed care. I think that's something that we have not really addressed. And from my experiences today, I'm wondering that might be tremendous need in the community. That would be another area I think we could get some of these most in need and get up and help with some of these children who are impacted by that and maybe keep them from flowing. And so that might be another area we could put out a request and ask, and we could hit a couple of buckets with this and also maybe help with young pregnant moms. At the last rethinking addictions in the state, when they had some panels, and a lot of the younger moms who had been using, had substance use disorder while pregnant. So I'm wondering, I'm trying to be very good about changing my use of language as well. I'm very curious and very interested in that, and wondering, we all talk about the pregnant housing. I'm very interested in those kind of areas that we could do a lot of good with just a small amount of targeted money. And I think that's a great idea to put out a request for, that was an RFP. There was this much money and ask someone to come in for that kind of thing, or that would be a request for an RFI. I'm not sure what that looks like. So those are my questions and my interests. I really see we could do a lot of good with some marginalized or groups that we haven't really been able to focus on. And I think that would be, for me, I'd be very interested in focusing on those two areas.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to raise the same point that the commissioner just did about the impacted children, right? I think that's sort of an issue of fundamental fairness that we haven't really hit in terms of the support we're providing to those struggling, but not those with whom it reverberates. But I was wondering if you know how other entities have identified those affected children, or sort of what form that support comes in.
I've seen education funding, relatively modest, but some sort of compensation there. And I don't know about the identification process, so I'd have to look into that.
Education funding, meaning what, like a
College
college
scholarship or something.
I wonder too, I mean, which is a great idea, but like, what are we doing for kids like 0 to 18, for instance, too?
Right. And I mean, certainly, I think, as the commissioner suggested, if we overlap that with trauma-informed care, there are certainly scholarships for other types of enrichment and activities or therapeutic work that may be available. So that's something, we have our organizations like the Yarrow Collective, but we also have organizations, obviously, within a different domain that work with children, like Child Safe, that we can kind of explore this with.
Or think about realities for children as well.
Yeah. I was thinking
that has such a big scope that they might be an issue. That's the sort of.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Lerma County's Health and Economic Services Director. One of these days I'm gonna get there. It's a lot for me. It's really good to the health. Sorry. It's been a long day.
And we started this morning at 8:30, yes.
Actually, I started at 7. I'm on the fire chief before that. I think she might have some insight to maybe help Human Services knows where maybe some of these children might be, or some ideas here too about how we could identify.
Oh, absolutely. So, in the case of putting out some kind of, call for requests, the network within the Human and Economic Health, those 6 departments touch probably every service provider in the county at some point or another. So we certainly could use that network to identify where the biggest bang for these bucks, I guess is how I'd say.
Including the Hispanic Latin.
Yes.
Okay.
And the advocacy organizations that work within like mobile home park communities and so forth, where we might see higher concentrations of lower income folks and people with these kind of concerns.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. This is one-time money for this year, or are we looking at extending this multiple years? So if we're going to start an education program, is it a one-time education program, or are we talking multiple years?
Yeah, that's a great question. The funding, David could probably tell us more. The funding was upfront loaded, but we've gotten a little bit more than we thought. But as the years go, we're going to see a decline. But absolutely, this is for this year. But as we do the priority setting starting in August for the next year, that absolutely will be part of the conversation. So great question. And Beth, did you have that too?
I did, yeah. I support everything that's been said so far. I would like to see us do something in the repair past harms section, which I don't think we've done yet. And I know that we just talked about some of that, and I don't know, when it says support children of overdose victims, just for clarity, can that be like overdose, they've died, overdose, and they still, because I think there are impacts to children whether the parent has died or not. So I guess I'm kind of like thinking if we should be open to that.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I was thinking, because the trauma-informed care, kind of bringing those two together, whether they have had an overdose or just, recovered from overdose, but also there might be trauma-informed care for that parent as well. And I know there have been some programs that we haven't been able to expand, that it could really be helpful for the parents, or healing from the parents. And I think, I don't know, that really appeals to me, to help with our youth. We could really break some generational, even if it's just a small group, still it would be massive change in generational traumas. Something that's really interesting for me. And also I think we had talked about it really could make impact. And then maybe this is overlap too. It could be in some of the mobile home parks and people of color in those areas. So I think there's a lot of overlap with all this. And so this really appeals to me.
We'd love to hear from our lived experience members. Marshall, Chris, would like to jump in.
Chris Wood.
Oh, good. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, everybody. I think about trauma-informed care all the time, and of course, grandparents who are raising children because of their own children who've misused substances, and a lot of times they're not connected with any of the services that we normally think of. Sometimes they're just on their own. So a way to reach some of them would be good. Grandparents raising grandchildren.
Thank you, Chris.
Or
Marshall, do you have anything to add?
So I'm just wondering if the support of children has to be overdose victims or children of people who are using opiates. Because I know a lot of female friends who no longer have their kids. Their kids are going through a lot right now because their mom's out still getting high. So I don't know necessarily that they've overdosed.
Right.
But they're still going through a lot right now because their mom is not there or their dad is not there.
So you could add to that, support children of parents that use.
Parents impacted by substance use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The definition should be widened.
More right, okay. You're good, man.
Yep, I
But
got it.
I want to be really, since this is opioid abatement, we really want to make sure we're because this could be really wide. And I know there's multiple substance disorders. I think since we don't have a lot of money, I think we really should be focused on opiate and fentanyl and that.
Yep.
So I just want to be,
The whole intent of, I believe that this is opioid.
but I just know that we have polysubstance, but I just would really like to focus on that.
Great, got it.
David's turned his camera on, so I wonder what David's thinking.
Does our attorney have a point to make here?
I was waiting to see if there was a question about the funds use under the MOU. So I had pulled it up and found the provision, but you don't have a question, so I'm not going to insert it.
Well, actually, I was going to ask a question, Mr. Chair. I was going to say, David, anything of this give you heartburn? Are we on track and aligned with the approved uses?
Well, then I guess to that extent, yeah, there's a specific section that talks about being able to use funds for a number of things, but one in particular is treatment of mental health trauma issues that resulted from the traumatic experiences of the opioid user, and for family members. And then they give some examples of surviving family members after an overdose or overdose fatality. So clearly the MOU is contemplating both impacts of use and impacts of the death. And it was also not a limited category, so it contemplates other outcomes. So It doesn't have to just be an overdose. It could be the mental health impacts on family members just from the use as well.
Thank you for that.
That's
Thank you, Dave.
excellent, I think, yeah.
Well,
Marshall, that was a great point.
Yeah, see, perfect.
I'll throw one more out there that I heard just in speaking with some of the lived experience on the board, was the challenge of the transition from unhoused or folks who are experiencing homelessness into recovery without housing accompanying it, right? So that the challenge of moving into recovery but not having housing come with you. And the available options being places where sobriety is hard to come by and where drug use is highly prevalent. So ensuring and maybe considering for the council whether that's something that we can consider either in this or place some sort of emphasis on for some of our existing grantees in the future. What does that outreach look like?
I was going to say, one thing I would like is probably recommendations on this so that we can get the most bang out of our funds.
Well, yeah, I think that's what I was suggesting is if we could, I don't know who would do this. I don't know, John, do we have to write an RFP? And how does that look? And does the council have a process? I don't know if we have a process in our bylaws for doing something like this. We haven't tried something like this yet.
Well,
Request or what does that look like?
we would have to have that conversation because our conversation was to do targeted approaches, and that's what we approved. So the RFP, just the sheer mechanism and resources needed, we just didn't have that ability. So that would have to be the conversation versus sending out a targeted approach like we've done in the past.
So could we do that with this and just say, can we start with these two areas of the Hispanic and Latin, and then the children impacted for trauma and care, and say these are two targeted approaches, and then just divide that bucket in half for each one and see what kind of, I don't know if that, maybe there's not enough, I don't know, but I'm just curious what that list looks like, because obviously no time like the present, we know this. I'm especially really excited about the repair past harms one, and I would love to see us move forward on that one.
Appreciate that. So what way we could do this, I could throw it out, is working alongside Jessica Plummer with the kind of behavioral health, we've done this in the past. We give what the target areas are, and she helps us with who have in the past in the community been working in that capacity, and then we send an email out and invite them to come present. That's how we've done it in the past.
That sounds great. So do you need a motion? I'll make
Yes.
that motion for us, for the ROAC to work with our advisory member, Jessica Plummer from Limerick County Behavioral Health Services, to put out 2 targeted requests to come back and present to the council. July?
Well,
Or just present and then we can send
Okay.
one targeted area of education and increasing resources to the Latin and Hispanic community. The other to repairing past harms and support children of overdose victims and substance use, opiate use disorder parents. And with an emphasis on trauma-informed care.
Well done. There's a second on that.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and second. I dare not try to repeat that. We're good. But does any more further conversation on the motion?
I would just like to circle back around about housing, as we talked about families impacted, and the concept of maybe including a reach of how we can help unhoused families who might be experiencing, as you said, trauma or whatever, because it's so difficult sometimes to find it, especially there.
Yeah, for you're talking about families.
Families,
But
yeah.
yeah, and so we would we've done a lot of housing, but maybe we need to ask for the next round for a targeted, a different targeted housing, because right now we've been just trying to get, we did women and then the increasing the amount of vouchers, so that might be a big conversation to have for.
It sure is, because housing is definitely that social determinant of health. It's a big one.
It might be an opportunity, if this is not a consideration for this one, but for your next allocation in August, it might be worth asking some of your providers. We saw in MJ's presentation that a large portion of their population is housing unstable, asking for some more detail on that so that we can kind of target where the need is.
I like that. I like that.
Also, I think if we can reach out, Wilmer County has a housing stability manager and there's other folks who are helping, like the housing authorities, and maybe we get information from
That's a really good idea.
a lot of different sources.
That's great.
And Wellington has groups, and I just think, because we're also out here as rural, there's probably lots of information to gather.
Great idea. Further conversation on the motion? All right. Anybody oppose the motion? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Okay, we are at the end of the agenda. Before we look for a motion to adjourn, we do have one of those announcements. Liv here, who's been doing a fantastic job as the ROAC administrative assistant, has landed her dream opportunity. I will let her turn it over, but she will be leaving us for a really, really good opportunity. So while we will definitely miss her and miss her not only, but the health department as well, we're very, very happy for Liv, and she's working hard for this. So I'm going to turn it over to Liv to let everybody know her next endeavor.
I just accepted a role with Metro State in Denver. I'll be working in their nursing department as their clinical compliance coordinator. So I will be pairing nursing students to hospitals around Denver for their clinicals. So,
yeah, congratulations.
Well, congratulations, Liv. You will be missed. With that, we got Brooke Lake here and others in our communications department, Corey and Jennifer, that will be jumping in to fill in the shoes that will be vacated by Liv. So I will, more information as we get going on that. Thank you, Brooke and others, for being here. With that, we do have a thank you, Liv, some cookies and little cupcakes to celebrate. So we can all say thank you and congratulations to Liv.
And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right. Anybody opposed that motion? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 3:36. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work.
Thank you, Liv.
Yes.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
Yes, great.
Right along.